All right, we're going to get into drawing the torso some more, but what I want to show you is that a very simplified approach to the collarbones is a bit of a handlebar-like look. So if you just picture the dip down, an angle across, kind of horizontally, a little bit of an angle up, an angle back. Now obviously there's more curves, organic curves associated with this, but this is a very simplified way to kind of look at collarbones. It's better than getting in the habit of drawing collarbones like this. And I'll admit some people do have a little bit straighter look to their collarbones. Generally, if you're looking up at the body, you might even see it where the collarbone center area looks a bit more like this. And so that's just because of the difference of the orientation from our viewpoint. But again, as a simplified approach, you can kind of think of it as this bit of a shape right there. You could draw these with some dimension. The pectoralis muscles are going to go against here. And then the sternum would come straight down. And it has a bit of a diamond-like shape at the base. Something like that. And again, that's just a very simplified way to look at it. Now, if we're tilting this away from our view, I might do something like this. And it's good to really just practice this one area. Draw it from some different orientations, different scales. Really try to figure out the curve and the bend. A lot of times I'll start from where the deltoid is and work in. That feels a little bit more natural to me for the most part, but really just focusing on getting that bend in there. It's almost like a bird flying through the air, right? So whatever you have to envision that helps you remember to get that bend in there. But again, I think the handlebars is kind of a good device for that. So now let's go back to that. So from here, if we were to think in simplistic terms for the muscles of the torso, let's first get in our basic primitive of a rib cage. Okay, we'll figure our deltoids will be over here. So something like that. We won't work too far down. We want to stay specific to this area because I really want to show you the relationship of these bony landmarks. Now another one that's really important to remember, you get this little bump right here that's usually pretty noticeable on anybody that's relatively lean. And what that is, that's the acromion process, and that's actually part of the scapula. So just remember that. It looks like it's part of the clavicle, but it's actually part of the scapula. And another area I want you to pay special attention to is in between the deltoid and the pectoralis. You get this little triangular shape, and it's actually a gap in between the muscles, and that's actually called the infraclavicular fossa. You also have this indent right here, which is called the jugular fossa. Just like that. So those little areas just kind of help you remember placement. And actually this probably would be a little bit further over, because what happens here is the deltoid really passes into this area where the pectoralis is. Now you've got the pectoralis minor and major, and the minor actually goes below the major and makes it protrude upward. That combined with the fact that the separations of the pectoralis, they all kind of spin and converge over here, and so you get this bulk of mass right there in that area. So it's something to pay attention to. Now what I want to do here is show one side of the body here with the deltoid and the arm down, so I can show the difference that you get here. So we'll have the bicep here, tricep here, and we'll just kind of stop there at the brachialis muscle in there. So all of these portions of the pectoralis spin and converge here. That coupled with the fact that the minor version of the muscle is beneath there, pushing it up and outward. So just remember that. You, on a very defined individual, you get some of the latissimus or latissimus dorsi, however you say that. And then the obliques, something like this. On this side, I want to raise the deltoid up. And this is an interesting area of the body to pay attention to, or something we need to dedicate a lot of time to, because something kind of unique happens here. So when the arm raises up, the pectoralis muscle goes with it. As we see here, it inserts in between the deltoid and on I guess the lateral side of the bicep. So what happens here is as this bicep comes up like this, and you get the coracobrachialis here, tricep here, something like that, and we'll stop that here. So what happens is you have to envision that all of these separations from the pectoralis have to wrap around and meet up to here, okay? And also, you'll tend to get a bit of a bump right here, or bowing out of the muscles. And I think that's a combination of two things. One is, again, all these separations of the pectoralis converging in that area. We know that the minor is also protruding out there, and so it's possible it's still pushing that outward a bit on the side. And then also the fact that it's wrapping around the arm, so it's creating this kind of bowing effect. And see, originally, well, for years when I studied this area, I always thought this was the deltoid, because it kind of looks like that, especially with that bowing of that portion of the muscle. So it was very easy for me to misunderstand. But this is actually, again, the pectoralis going up front, and then the deltoid reverses to the back more. So as we raise our arms up and we rotate them backwards, the deltoid is more visible on the back side, and you really only get the one head from this angle, visibility of the one head. So we also have to imagine or envision that the muscles encroach upon the clavicle area and cover that more. And so that's another noticeable thing, is when you see somebody that's very defined, a lot of times you see less of the bony landmarks because their muscles start to get larger and again, encroach or encompass, however you want to look at that, they start to cover that up more. Just like if you have more fat deposits on the body, it has a similar effect. Obviously a little bit different overall look, but same concept. And then back here you get the trapezius. And what I tend to notice there is that as your arm rotates upward, it kind of pushes this back more. So that becomes less noticeable, and all of this starts to kind of take dominance and block that a bit more. But you do still see a noticeable dip, separation than the deltoid. I think that's important to pay attention to. I've kind of over illustrated the acromion process there, so I'll push that back in the revision. But again, it's good to showcase that there is a good amount of separation there, that it doesn't just blend in from the dip of the trapezius. Now the trapezius generally goes like this, comes down more abruptly right here, and then over. And that's where it would hit the acromion process, spine of scapula, something like that. But okay, so that's just another thing to watch out for. Then through here we would get the sternocleidomastoid. That also separates like this. The trapezius comes over at a bit of a shift like this. Okay, and then down here into the abdominal area, as long as the rib cage is not extruded outward, then you just get the abdominal muscles through here. Now you can remember that with the abdominal muscles, there's a lot of asymmetry that generally happens there. It's kind of strange because the rest of the muscles can seem pretty symmetrical. I mean, nothing's truly symmetrical in the body, but for the most part, visually they can appear pretty symmetrical. But it's very common for the stomach muscles to be very asymmetrical. But for this particular exercise, I'll keep them relatively symmetrical. And then, so on the sides here, you get the serratus. Remember, as I mentioned before, this is really the latissimus dorsi or dorsi. And that's going to protrude outward more with the raised arm. So we have to get a little bit of that in there. And we might even see a little bit of the rear delt right here, which would be the posterior head. And back into here, we would get the obliques. It would come up like this. And they would interlock with the serratus. And you can notice once you interlock these together, it looks sort of like a blade, the teeth on a blade. So serrated means a jagged edge, and serratus is actually derived from Latin, and the Latin meaning is to saw. So it's just a good way to kind of remember these shapes here. So just like that, we get those in there. Representation of those anyways. And the obliques come all the way down into here and kind of flow into the side of the rectus abdominis. So you've got the sternum down the middle, clavicle there. And so again, this is all just, this particular example, I really just want you to focus on the bony landmarks that allow you to get to the deltoid and the pectoralis muscles, but then also keeping in mind that when you raise an arm that, you get a very distinct difference there. And I think that's very important to pay attention to since it's easy to get wrong. So we want to definitely focus in on this. So in this next lesson, we're going to clean this up a bit more. It's a bit messy right now, but we'll refine this a bit. And I also feel like the arm is too detached away from, and therefore making the pectoralis too wide. It really needs to be back into here more. So I'll try to fix that as we revisit it. And then also I want there to be a very distinct difference from the lat on the one side to the other, because we have a very different V'ing out of the body when we tend to raise and rotate our arms back. So let's stop here, head over to the next lesson, and continue on.